Hello and welcome to a live Kerfefe break on Deprogram with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. I'm here with my guest co-host today, a friend of the show, Sara Higdon. Welcome, Sara.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's always fun to come on. I love this.
I love just hanging out. If you're new to the channel, this is a live show we do Mondays and Fridays. We talk about sometimes what's in the news topically and sometimes just whatever's on our mind and hang out with the deprogrammed audience and have a good time. Sara, I mentioned before we started that you look like you have a zest for life, and you were like, "It's from the gym."
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the after workout sweat, like your pores are clean, everything, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
It's good. It's good to
Good.
start the morning that way.
I start almost every morning. I take the weekends off, but I'm in the gym almost every morning.
I started back a few weeks ago. I'm going 3 times a week, so I'm not quite where you are yet, but it's good. It's the thing where you don't I don't want to do it, but then once I get there, I'm like, "I'm so glad I did it."
See, I have to. I mean, I was in the army for 7.5 years, so it's kind of routine for me. But as well, I can't work out at night. It actually boosts my energy instead of drains my energy. And as well, I have anxiety, and I got off of SSRIs, and I started and went to got a gym membership. And so basically, the gym membership helps keep me, you know, from having anxiety. It helps my sanity, I guess.
Yeah.
It's my
Uh,
one place I can clear my head and just work all that energy out.
it's cathartic. It's good for the mind, not just the body.
Yeah.
Um, well, hey, tell people where they can find you online. We have your YouTube channel linked below, but if people are not familiar with you, who are you?
Yeah.
Where are you?
So the easiest place to find me, I mean, just go to my website. It's just sarahhigdon.com. That's got all my links. It's got links to all my articles I've written, and as well as my Twitter and Instagram are both just Sara Higdon with an underscore after it. And you can find me all over. I'm on just about every platform. So
Cool. I just have a couple announcements to get through, and then if you
yeah.
have any. So, if you're a returning audience member of Deprogram and you'd like to support the show, we do have a Patreon, a Locals, and a Subscribe Star. I gotta get. I always be forgetting all these. And you can also just share the links. That helps if you share episodes that you like. There's 2 events coming up near me. If you're in the Texas area or if you're willing to travel. So one is so near me. It's at my house, February 11th. My husband and I are having our second house concert. The first one was awesome. We actually had several people travel here from the deprogrammed audience. I met a few people, um, and it's what it sounds like. It's like an old-fashioned salon style show. My husband's a musician. You can find him at Anthony Garcia. He does piano, guitar. So the first show we had, he hired let's see, well, we had an opera singer, upright bass, fiddle player, drums, everything. And the second show is going to be all different musicians. He's going to try and make each show a little bit different. And if you would like tickets, we don't post the link publicly because it's our house and it's limited capacity and we don't want crazy people coming. Um, so you can just email me at deprogrammedpod@gmail.com. I'm going to go through those later today. Email me at deprogrammedpod@gmail.com if you want the ticket link. If I recognize you and everything, we'll figure it out. Um, the other thing is, this was just announced. I'm going to put on the screen. Minds Minds is having another Minds Fest, and this one's going to be April 15th. It's coming up in Austin. I'm going to be hosting this one. I haven't this just They just announced this, and I haven't even really tweeted about it yet. Here's some of the people that you can expect there. It's April 15th, 2023 this year. It's going to be, let's see, Eliza Blue is going to be there, Jamie Kilstein, Peter Boghossian, Tim Cass, Jack Posobiec, Ian Crossland, Bill Ottman, Destiny. It's a whole list of people. And I think they're still announcing some people. There's going to be music and comedy and panels. My dog is very excited and has a lot to say. Sorry. My husband just came and got him. Anyway, anyway, if you're interested in coming to that, if you're in Austin or if you want to travel to it, you can find out where to get tickets at minds.com. and I'm a little nervous about that. I'm nervous and excited, Sarah.
That's good. That's a good event. Mine's is a great organization, so that's exciting.
Yeah, I went to the one they did in New York at the Hammerstein Ballroom and this past summer, and just went up there to hang out with friends and see people, and it was a great lineup. They had Cornel West on stage, who is someone who I greatly respect, even though he's part of the left. I know some
Yeah,
get their back up that I like him. I don't agree with him on everything, but I love that they bring together people like that who are willing, at least he's willing to have conversations, right? And he
exactly.
disagrees with the woke a lot. So it was cool to have all these different varying perspectives on the stage. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Austin one.
That's great.
But do you have something you wanted to announce? You have something coming up in Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have a few events. So, I mean, I don't know if I've been on since I started traveling quite a bit in the last year, right? So, coming up in Wisconsin, I'm doing an event with I think the organization is Parents on Patrol.
Okay.
And it's with it's gonna be me, Jamie Mitchell from Gays Against Groomers, and Chloe Cole, as well as some other members that are trying to fight for children and what's going on in schools and everything like that. So it's going to be a great event. It's kind of in the Milwaukee area of Wisconsin, so you can just go check that out as well. I will be in DC next month on the 19th. The Libertarian Party National is having a anti-war rally in the Capitol. It's also sponsored by a couple other organizations. And then in March, I have two events. One I'm not going to mention yet because nothing's finalized, but then the other one, it will be in Pennsylvania, Westchester, Pennsylvania, with no left turn education. And it's kind of, if you saw the news a few weeks ago, the school board denied me and Chloe coming to speak at the school. So instead of just like tucking our tails, we're going to host an event there instead and invite parents and stuff to come out and hear me and Chloe speak.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, just do it anyway. Of course they
Yeah.
denied you a permit to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah. I mean, well, that was the thing is their elementary school principal bragged on Twitter that their teachers learned all about gender. And when you look at the person that taught the class, it was like this woke activist that taught this class about gender. They really didn't learn about gender. They learned about queer theory and how to teach queer theory to 5-year-olds, essentially.
Wow. No wonder they don't want you there.
Take,
I still run into people who they don't realize what's being taught, really. They're sort of like, they think all resistance to this is I think they have this stereotype of like some bigoted right-wing Republican conservative, like they have all these things in their head of what this person is who would oppose this. And they think it's just about people who hate gay people, who don't want kids to learn about anti-bullying, and that's not what it is at all. They're
no.
hiding queer theory in anti-bullying language and curriculum.
Well, it's interesting because I mean that's what happens though too when people aren't like don't actually go do their own research on this type of stuff. And I mean, how many people believe that the don't say or the parental choice bill in Florida was the don't say gay bill, and it literally meant that you can't say the word gay in Florida. I mean, how many people actually bought into that? It's the
Yeah.
messaging on the left. They're good at it, and so when you hear all this stuff and it's like, wait a second, like I know like some of the heads of these organizations that I work with, they actually carry some of like the genderqueer book and stuff like that in their purse. So when they talk to people and they're like, that's not what they're teaching, that's not what's in the library, they pull the book out and they say, this is what we're talking about. And people are like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
oh my, like what? And so when they start to see that, I think most people are against it when they see it. And actually the stats don't lie either. I mean, 71% of people don't agree with children transitioning, as well as they also don't, the same amount doesn't believe that, trans women should compete in women's sports. But at the same point in time, 64% of the population supports trans people.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing that gap.
Yeah.
Most people, I think, have common sense where they can differentiate between the two.
Right. They like to pretend on the left that it's sort of you can't those things can't be true. You can't support trans people and also say that trans women should not be competing with women. They're but that's false. Like they're trying to lock you into this sort of like you're either anti-trans or pro-trans and you have to be all these things if you're pro-trans. It's like when they say anti-racist.
Well, that's what the radical feminists kind of do the same thing, but the opposite. It's like if you saw, I was on with Megan Fox's channel 2 weeks ago, maybe last week, and I was on there to debate a radical feminist who basically they say that just by me living my life, I'm promoting gender ideology. Just by being trans, I'm promoting gender ideology, and that's what some people on the right believe too. So if you go to the far right, that's where they're thinking about it too. And it's like most people are not in these far divides. They don't believe like one thing or another. It's just most people I think see nuance and they can see that it's not all or nothing.
Yeah. I wanted to put this one bit of good news on the screen before we get into some topics. Jules says, I had good news today, chat. I mentioned a few weeks ago my cat was having surgery. I was told he probably had cancer, lymphoma, but the biopsy came back as just very severe inflammation. Congratulations. I'm very happy for you. Thanks for sharing good news on a Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what's on your mind lately and what you want to talk about, but I just did have to get out of the way that yesterday was Dolly Parton's birthday. I don't know how you celebrated, but we have, I've like, it's kind of a joke now, but I actually really do have the past couple of Dolly Parton's birthdays been really special days for me and my husband. And so it's just like kind of a tradition now. It's like celebrating it. So last night I was gonna watch we were gonna watch one of my favorites, Smoky Mountain Christmas, but instead we watched Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Have you seen this movie?
I have not.
Oh my goodness, Sarah. It holds up. It's early 80s. It's like 1982. Dolly Parton, Burt Reynolds, and Dom DeLuise plays the bad guy, and he's so deliciously good as this bad guy. But even if you don't like musicals, like it's sort of like a musical, but even if you don't like musicals, you'll like it. It's just it's funny. They get away with stuff that you're like, I can't believe they get away with this. And it's just a very feel-good movie about horrors, like a horror. That's the other thing. The whole time you're watching it, you're like, this kind of feels like a hokey, kind of like fun family movie, except it's not at all. It's the subject matter. You forget that it's about like what it's about, like in a way, because it's so cheesy musical. Anyway.
But that's Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton is just this bubbly person that just everybody falls in love with when they hear her. She's just amazing.
Yeah. It's also because there's so many dance and musical numbers sort of that we were watching it. We're like, this is simultaneously the most country and the gayest movie ever, which is Dolly Parton's audience.
Oh my God, it is. It's like everybody that I know, it's like gays love her, and you're right. The country fans love her too. It's like everybody, like the people that you would think would be like the most homophobic love Dolly Parton.
Everyone loves Dolly.
It's her personality. I mean, she is just a bubbly personality that I don't know how anybody could hate her.
Right. Like, how could you even? I mean, she's done some things that disappointed me. When I posted about it being her birthday, I had some online friends who are like, what about when she changed the lyrics of her song Jolene to Vaccine? I'm like, I know it's so cringe, but at the same time, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, just because someone makes what you consider to be a poor choice, I mean, I still love her. I still think that overall what she's contributed to society, and she gives so much to charity and to kids literacy and to hospitals in her area, and just the joy that she's added to the world. Like, she can make some bad decisions, in my opinion. What are bad decisions, and I still love her.
Well, think about that though too, is like you can't, I mean, think about how many people if you didn't, you would not have anybody in your life if you just threw everybody out for disagreeing with you, It's like, okay, I don't agree with that messaging or anything like that, but I mean, especially when you look at celebrities, it's like celebrities kind of are kind of woke. They kind of buy into the woke stuff, and whether they believe it or not, they don't always fit our values, but it's not like I mean, how many movies would you be able to watch if you were going to just not watch because you didn't like what one of the actors did one time?
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to see anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just had to put that out there that was yesterday, and I'm coming off of a big joyful post Dolly Parton's birthday day. Other than that, we've been on Deprogram, we've been slowly reading through the Twitter files, which I think is very important because the mainstream media, have you noticed this? They're doing everything they can to ignore it. Like, and it's hard to do that because the journalists who are releasing this information, this data, these communications and evidence, they've been slowly rolling it out over time to make it harder for the mainstream news to ignore it. And yet they're almost like
Yeah.
pretending like it doesn't exist.
Yeah, they don't want anything to like they know that like they don't the mainstream media doesn't like independent media anyways, and they're not going to support it. So the fact that Elon's doing that alone is just showing that it is kind of thumbing them in the eye. And I think that's one of the things is they can't filter through it and make sure that their narrative still gets pushed out because they're just dropping the files as whole so people can make up their own mind.
Yeah. Have you read through the part 10 yet, which is when they start to get into the COVID stuff?
I have not. So this
Okay.
is going to be learning for me as well.
That's great. Let's read it. I've been reading through it because I feel like some people would prefer to listen rather than sit on Twitter and read through all of it. And also, I think everyone should be covering this so it gets further out there. So we are up to part 10. Been taking my time with it. Part 10 of the Twitter files. And this may be the episode of the Twitter files where we get banned or we get a video taken down because
every
I don't.
time I'm on, we
I
get
mean,
you banned. We think it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen one of these times.
one of these times. Well, because I don't know how much of this stuff you're allowed to say yet on YouTube, so we'll just see. But like people still have a hesitancy even to say the word COVID. You know, people are still using words like the coof and the vid. But we'll see. So I'm going to read through this. Feel free to interrupt me to talk about any of it, Sarah.
Okay.
If my voice gets tired, I'll let you take over for me. Part 10 was put out by David Zweig. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but you can follow him on Twitter at David ZWEIG. And this is part 10 of the Twitter files. The Twitter files, how Twitter rigged the COVID debate. By censoring info that was true but inconvenient to US government policy, by discrediting doctors and other experts who disagreed, by suppressing ordinary users, including some sharing the CDC's own data. So far, the Twitter files have focused on evidence of Twitter's secret blacklist, how the company functioned as a kind of subsidiary of the FBI, and how executives rewrote the platform's rules to accommodate their own political desires. What we have yet to cover is COVID. This reporting for the Free Press is one piece of that important story. The United States government pressured Twitter and other social media platforms to elevate certain content and suppress other content about COVID-19. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. I don't care.
No.
Even if you're in the echo chamber, I think you had to be aware of that, right?
I would think so. Yeah, because I think unless you are a complete sheep, then you would think that they were telling you the 100% truth about everything.
Yeah. Internal files at Twitter that I viewed while on assignment for the Free Press showed that both the Trump and Biden administrations directly pressed Twitter executives to moderate the platform's pandemic content according to their wishes. At the onset of the pandemic, according to meeting notes, the Trump admin was especially concerned about panic buying. They came looking for, quote, help from the tech companies to combat misinformation, end quote, about, quote, runs on grocery stores, end quote. But there were runs on grocery stores. So
Yeah.
you can see a little screenshot here where he's got the Trump White House, specifically Michael Kratsios, led the Trump administration's calls for help from tech companies to combat misinformation. Areas of focus included conspiracies around 5G cell towers, runs on grocery stores, and misinformation that could stoke panic buying and behaviors. It wasn't just Twitter. The meetings with the Trump White House were also attended by Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and others. When the Biden administration took over, one of their first meeting requests with Twitter executives was on COVID. the focus was on, quote, anti-vaxxer accounts, end quote, especially Alex Berenson.
Yeah, if you remember, because this is what people forget, is Trump is still a big advocate for the vaccine.
Yeah.
Like people on the right, I don't necessarily know if they still want to admit that.
Yeah, and on the left too. The left tries to pretend like Trump was some sort of
Oh yeah,
anti-vax. He wasn't. The vaccine was developed in the Trump administration. I
he
mean,
said it was the best thing ever created in that
yes,
record amount of time. Yeah,
yes, yeah. In the summer of
that,
2021. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say that was the whole point. Like, Candace Owens did an interview with him, remember? And that was a contentious interview because she was like, "You're still pushing this." He's like,
Yes.
"Yeah."
He's like
Isn't.
I mean, I remember the other thing about him that is so funny to me now, and the way they've tried to rewrite history is in real time. I watched as at the very beginning, before COVID became a huge story in the US, people who were paying attention to what was happening in China were talking about it, were talking about the virus, and they were being dismissed by mainstream media as right-wing conspiracy theorists. And the mainstream media was putting out articles saying, basically, COVID's no worse than the flu. Don't listen to these right-wingers. These right-wing conspiracy theorists are trying to scare us. Like, there's no big deal about COVID. And then Trump came out and said, hey, this is a serious virus. We're going to limit international travel, and he put a travel ban on a few countries, including China. And then what happened? The mainstream media, all these Democratic politicians, the establishment started calling him a racist. Biden called him a xenophobe. They were basically saying, look, COVID's just a big right-wing conspiracy, and these guys are just racist, and they're just trying to like ban travel from China because they hate Chinese people or something. Like, it was so crazy because then they
It was a
flipped.
lot.
Yeah,
Well,
then they
yeah,
completely
it
flipped.
flipped in like a day. Remember this too? Because they were like, no, there's no need for masks. There's no need for any of this. And then it was like, I don't even know. It happened like around March of 2020. And it was like, no need for masks, no need for any of this stuff. And then like one day it was just like complete reversal. You have to lock yourself in the house 10
Yes.
days to slow the spread, wear a mask everywhere. And it, like, I don't know if they just got like a memo like saying, hey, we can push this, we can use this to our advantage and try to, execute some of our more big government policies.
Yeah, they turned on a dime. Then they tried to make Trump out to be somehow like anti-vax, or like somehow like they tried to paint him in this way that he never was, completely
Yeah.
ignoring how they had been attacking him from the other side at the beginning. It was so crazy.
Well, and remember his whole like the whole injecting bleach comment. It's
Yes.
like if you look at that comment in context and you see what he actually said, you're a moron if you think that that's what he said. It's like he was asking if there was a way that we could get like something that could go into the system, asking if there was something we could develop something that could go into the system and act like bleach and just clean the system out.
Yes.
That's not saying you should inject bleach.
Now you have to be disingenuous, I think, to cast it in that light, or be very
Yeah,
gullible and to be someone who's heard it cast in that light and be inclined to believe that he's that dumb and that he's telling people to do that.
exactly.
I did want to put this on screen. I saw this go by. A couple people said this. AH, thank you. He's just pointing out, to be honest, Trump never advocated mandates. Yeah, people were saying he's pro-vaccine, but he was never pro-mandate.
Right. That's true.
Okay, so we're going to continue. If you're just joining us, we're reading through Twitter Files Part 10. This one was released by journalist David Zweig. It's ZWEIG. And this one is all about COVID. In the summer of 2021, President Biden said that social media companies were, quote, killing people, end quote, for allowing vaccine misinformation. Berenson was suspended hours after Biden's comments and kicked off the platform the following month. Berenson sued and then settled with Twitter. In the legal process, Twitter was compelled to release certain internal communications, which showed direct White House pressure on the company to take action on Berenson specifically. Here we go. This is from it's on a Slack channel private is the channel type at Twitter. There's this thing about White House. How was the White House? Crosses fingers. Overall, pretty good. They had one really tough question about why Alex Berenson hasn't been kicked off of the platform. Otherwise, their questions were pointed but fair. And mercifully, we had answers. That's the White House asking Twitter about why haven't you kicked this guy off? It's crazy. A December 2022 summary of meetings with the White House by Lauren Culbertson, Twitter's head of U.S. public policy, adds new evidence of the White House's pressure campaign and cements that it repeatedly attempted to directly influence the platform. Culbertson wrote that the Biden team was, quote, very angry that Twitter had not been more aggressive in deplatforming multiple accounts. They wanted Twitter to do more. Twitter executives, go ahead.
I think that all this, like the fact that they're pressuring Twitter to do this stuff just shows like their arguments can't stand up. And so they have to silence dissent. Like they can't argue in good faith against this type of stuff. So they have to silence the dissent. And I mean, it's a clear violation of the First Amendment, obviously, though.
It's a clear violation. And it's also something I kept pointing out in some of the previous episodes of covering these files is that so many on the left had just started repeating this line of like, it's a private company. It can do what it wants. It's a private company. It can do what it wants, which number one ignores the fact that just because it's a legal kind of censorship doesn't mean it's not an unethical or immoral kind of censorship. Like I think it's an unethical either way, even if it's the legal kind of censorship. But the second point is that it wasn't without government influence. The government was involved. The Twitter files has shown through each of these dumps time and time again that Twitter executives, and we know other social media companies were too, were meeting with the FBI, the CIA, what's the one I'm blanking on? I can't think of it, but it was multiple 3-letter agencies, multiple, and they were getting weekly meetings.
The NSA.
The NSA, they were meeting with all of these different departments who were basically telling them, you need to go in, like in this case, specifically targeting certain Twitter users to be banned. They were sending over lists. Some of these people were high profile, some were not. Some were joke accounts. They were asking that Twitter censor joke accounts. Like that's government involvement in speech. That's the government going to a private company and using the private company to censor the American people and to censor what information we get to hear.
Yeah. That's, like I said, that's a clear violation of the First Amendment. And it makes it so that, Twitter is no longer like it's when Twitter is acting on behalf of the government, that's no longer a private company matter. That is a constitutional matter that the government is censoring people, censoring speech, and it's the government doing it, not Twitter.
Yes. They're using the private companies, but it's the government doing it.
Yeah, and probably holding subsidies over their head too.
Yeah. Twitter executives did not fully capitulate to the Biden team's wishes. An extensive review of internal communications at the company revealed employees often debating moderation cases in great detail and with more care than was shown by the government towards free speech. But Twitter did suppress views, many from doctors and scientific experts, that conflicted with the official positions of the White House. As a result, legitimate findings and questions that would have expanded the public debate went missing. There were 3 serious problems with Twitter's process. First, much of the content moderation was conducted by bots trained on machine learning and AI, impressive in their engineering, yet still too crude for such nuanced work. Second, contractors in places like the Philippines also moderated content. They were given decision trees to aid in the process, but tasking non-experts to adjudicate tweets on complex topics like myocarditis and mask efficacy data was destined for a significant error rate. Look, this is a little tree where it's like to help people in the Philippines who are moderating content, like, does the tweet say this? Is it about this? Then go here, then do this. Like, that's so funny to me.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Oh,
you have to stick with the official narrative, and if you didn't, then you were kicked off.
yeah. There's just something very comical about like probably people who were paid hourly in the Philippines to sit there and try and like customer service people like, hmm, should I block this person? Like,
Did this person get blocked? Maybe, maybe not. Do they have over this many followers? Are they this?
yeah. Plus, I think about if English is not your first language, just the communication gap that sometimes happens. I think back to some of the customer service calls I've had where there's this lack of understanding on both sides, where it's like, no, I'm not saying that, I'm saying this, and they're like trying to get me to understand something. It's so funny.
I wonder, did Elon get rid of like the offshore like people too, like the moderators?
Like in
I
the
don't
Philippines,
know.
I have no idea.
Yeah, because I was locked out of my Twitter account twice in a week for
Yes.
yeah, because you had commented because I was locked out and twice, and it was like just because of using this similar similar words, like the combination of words in the tweet couldn't have anything, you couldn't have anything to do with mental illness, and it's the same tweet as LGBT
Yes,
or anything.
because then I commented on your suspension and
Yeah,
I got suspended. This is true on Twitter. There's some kind of automation set up, or maybe it's a tree like this in the Philippines where they go, did it say, did they mention mental health issues? Yes. Did they also mention LGBT in the same tweet in some context? Yes. Ban them. Like that's
yeah,
it. You can't put those two things in the same tweet.
yeah. It was, and I don't know if they fixed it yet.
Mhm.
I've seen people comment like saying similar stuff to what I said, and they haven't been suspended, so I don't know. But I hope they changed like the automatic flagging that they had in the system and stuff like that. Now,
Yeah.
kind of, not to go off too far off
Yeah, go
topic
ahead.
with what I have though, is I suggest, and I suggested this after I came back. It's like I suggest that Elon at least have for Twitter Blue members have an actual person that you can talk to, like so
Oh,
that these, because if you're a paying member of Twitter, and you know you're taking and you get kicked off and you can't tweet for 2 days, that's not a return. Like your return is diminished. You're not getting everything that you paid for. And I got an apology from them, so it's like when you get an apology, it's like, well, wait a second, but so now you're admitting that you did wrong, so I wasn't able to tweet. I wasn't able to use something that I pay for, and it was a wrongful
and
suspension.
they don't
So
care about none of these social media companies. I don't know if you guys know, if you don't have a like a YouTube channel, you don't know what the process is for strikes and trying to fight them or say no, this was incorrect. And it is completely like you just send it into the ether and you don't know if you'll hear back. And it's like that on
yeah,
Twitter too, to some degree. You're just kind of like,
well, that's what and that's so.
yeah,
I mean, that whole situation. I was on Newsmax discussing it because I was not going to delete the tweet. I was going to see how much pressure we could put on Twitter to have them reverse it. And so it was like, but I do have a platform. I have the ability to be able to do that. I have the ability to, go to Newsmax and go say, hey, this is what's going on. They're censoring me for this, and this. Not everybody else can do that. Most people are just going to delete the tweet and
yeah.
then move on forward. And like you said, you appeal. I appealed it once. That appeal got denied. And so what's the person going to do next? They're going to try to appeal it again, and then they'd never know if you're ever going to see, like the first time my account just came back. I never got an email. Never got nothing. It just came back. And so you could sit there for weeks and weeks and weeks and never hear back from them on the second appeal at all.
Someone in the Philippines is like, reverse button, but they
Well,
don't tell
and
you.
that was and then the second time though, that was the second time I actually did get the email and Twitter apologized and said, we made a mistake. I'm like, wow, I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Well, no, an apology, an
I
automated,
know.
an automated apology.
But I think that they should have it so that, like I said, Twitter Blue members have a better customer service. Because if you're paying for it, you should have at least a dedicated customer service team specifically for Twitter Blue.
That might make it worth it for me. I haven't done the Twitter Blue thing, but if they had something like that where you could look, this was a mistake and talk to an actual person.
Yeah.
But
Well, I did Twitter Blue, and honestly, I don't care about the check mark.
Mm.
Because the verification process on there is not. I mean, there's no like ID check or anything like that. But the thing about Twitter Blue that I like is, as a creator, it puts your tweets as priority. So anytime you comment under somebody else's tweet, it'll actually have your tweet more at the top. If you ever scroll through other people's tweets, like the comment sections, Twitter Blue members are usually higher up and mostly on the top.
I
And so
hadn't
it puts
noticed
your
that.
content higher, and it gives you a status in the algorithm that's different than if you're not paid.
Oh, I figured we would learn different things like that. Like, what is it? What are the benefits over time?
Yeah.
Well, hey, I'm going to put this back on screen. If you're
Yeah.
just joining us, Sara Higdon and I were just reading through the Twitter Files Part 10. And this one's all about the vid, the coof, the jab. We're reading this from David Zweig's profile, Zweig. You can follow him on Twitter at David ZWEIG. And he's the one that put out the part 10 of the Twitter Files. So we're going to pick up here on tweet 17. Third, most importantly, the buck stopped with higher level employees at Twitter who chose the inputs for the bots and decision trees and subjectively decided escalated cases and suspensions. As it is with all people and institutions, there was individual and collective bias. With COVID, this bias bent heavily toward establishment dogmas. Inevitably, dissident yet legitimate content was labeled as misinformation, and the accounts of doctors and others were suspended, both for tweeting opinions and demonstrably true information. Exhibit A: Dr. Martin Kulldorff, an epidemiologist at Harvard Medical School, tweeted views at odds with U.S. public health authorities and the American left, the political affiliation of nearly the entire staff at Twitter. And so you can see in his tweet here, Dr. Martin Kulldorff says, well, he's responding to a question. So the question is, Dr. Kulldorff, do you think that younger age groups and or people who already had the virus need to be vaccinated? I am not an anti-vaxxer. Look, you could see at this point in March, there were already people who were so we felt the need to qualify like that. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Of course not. Like
Yeah.
what? Okay, but we all felt the need to say that. They made us, they've demonized people who are anti-vax to such a degree and thrown so many people in that category who aren't even in that category that people have to say that up front. I hate that. I am not
Well,
an anti-vaxxer.
and Fauci himself, I mean, this is, again, them turning on a dime. Fauci himself at one point said talked about natural immunity. If you've already had the virus, it doesn't make sense to get the vaccine.
Right.
And that was suppressed.
Yes.
You know?
He changed what he said all the time. Like
Yeah.
that dude, just the biggest liar.
I put out a reel with Outspoken a few months maybe a few months ago now, where when he said, I never recommended shutting the country down. And I'm like, oh, well, let's play the record. And I played the clip of him saying, it was a hard decision, but I recommended to the president that we shut the country down. I'm like, oh.
Here you
The
are.
internet is forever.
Two Sisters and Some Yarn. Hello, give it up for Two Sisters and Some Yarn modding the chat today. She says, I am an anti-vaxxer and I was before it was cool, so suck it. I love Amy. I don't mind being
Malone get banned too.
Yes. Oh yeah, Robert Malone got banned. I think they're going to get to him. Yeah. All these doctors and scientists. And then they were able to go and say, because they were banning and deplatforming doctors and scientists and experts, then they were able to say, hey, the medical consensus is this. And it's like, no, the medical consensus on Big Social might be that, because you've banned all the experts and doctors who disagree with you and who are asking questions. But that is not the medical consensus. That is not the scientific consensus. Yeah. Thank you for the super sticker. Tatsu Sana, thank you so much. Okay, here we go. We're picking this back up. I just want to show this too. Oceana 23, Fauci's a sociopath. I absolutely agree. That's just my opinion.
He's a pathological liar.
Yeah, totally.
Which most people in government are.
I'm starting to believe that's true. So we're picking up with the Twitter files part 10. This is about a doctor, an example they're giving of a Dr. Martin Kulldorff, who an epidemiologist at Harvard Medical School. and we're about to see what happened to him, but this was something he said on Twitter. Someone said, Dr. Kulldorff, do you think younger age groups and or people who already had the virus need to be vaccinated? I am not an anti-vaxxer, but I am, quote, vaccine hesitant about this one. It seems to be a religious mantra now that everyone must be vaccinated. And then Dr. Martin Kulldorff replied, no, thinking that everyone must be vaccinated is as scientifically flawed as thinking that nobody should be. COVID vaccines are important for older, high-risk people and their caretakers. Those with prior natural infection do not need it, nor children. Okay, so internal emails at Twitter show an, quote, intent to action by a moderator saying that Kulldorff's tweet violated the company's COVID-19 misinformation policy and claimed that he shared, quote, false misinformation. Do you see that this is an epidemiologist, an expert, a doctor at Harvard Medical School, and there's some Twitter person, not a doctor, not an expert, a Twitter person sitting there going, I think this is false. like I just got
It doesn't go along with the narrative, so it's false.
Right. I just want people, if you're on the left and you're watching this and you're an intelligent person, which I know so many of you are, do you think this is right? Do you think that this should fall into the hands of 20-year-olds who have a job at Twitter? You know what I mean? Like that they get to decide what is science, what is consensus.
Science. The 20-year-old at Twitter is the scientist, and the scientist is the misinformationist.
Right. It's so absurd. So here's the screenshot of the email at Twitter, and they've blacked out the Twitter employee's name, but the person says, "Hi team, sending a heads up that we will take action on Martin Kulldorff, a professor of Harvard Medical School, for violating our COVID-19 misinformation policy, specifically by sharing false information regarding the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines, which goes against CDC guidelines." And so there they are, it's talking about how they're going to take action against him. And so this continues, but Kulldorff's statement was an expert's opinion, one which also happened to be in line with vaccine policies in numerous other countries. Yet it was deemed, quote, false information by Twitter moderators merely because it differed from the CDC guidelines. After Twitter took action, Kulldorff's tweet was slapped with a, quote, misleading label, and all replies and likes were shut off, throttling the tweet's ability to be seen and shared by many people, the ostensible core function of the platform. So this is censorship of an expert, an epidemiologist at Harvard Medical School. This is censorship by big social at the behest, in part, of the government. Leftists, what are you thinking? I don't care what you consider yourself. Like, it doesn't matter which tribe you're in. What are you thinking? This is not right. Did you even know this was happening? Or were you so like shut off in your echo chamber? Like I know some of you were, and I used to be in that echo chamber. Were you so shut off that you didn't even know this stuff was happening? Sorry.
No, go off, Keri. Go off.
You're right. Snaps.
Yeah, you're right though. It's like these. What are people thinking? Like, you're right. How many people did understand that this was happening, or how many people were just literally just listening to the narrative and not questioning it? Like, did they see this happening, and did they think that like when they were saying that people were getting banned for misinformation, it was just like you're a redneck out and like out in the middle of the woods, like just tweeting just this nonsense stuff? Because they start labeling everything that's misinformation, like QAnon conspiracy theories, but it's these people that we're talking about that are getting banned.
Yes. And when I asked that question, Sarah, because I've had this conversation sometimes in real life with offline, not on Twitter, like with people I know face to face, some of whom are still in that echo chamber, and some of them are, I think, based on our conversations, are totally unaware this was happening. They don't even know because they've been told what to think about. They've been told what to think about claims of censorship. and they don't even see the censorship. First of all, this wouldn't pop up in their timeline. The fact that Dr. Martin Kulldorff at Harvard Medical School, an epidemiologist, the fact that he was banned, that might not even come into their timeline. And if it did, it would come in the form of some op-ed by some other millennial, probably at the Daily Beast or something, saying, claims of censorship of doctors are right-wing misinformation. That's how they would hear about it.
Yeah. That's what's sad is, I mean, we absolutely, we live in multiple universes. Like, we don't need like a multiverse. We live in one, because especially with the internet, like it's echo chambers, but more, because it's like you hear this information and you never hear, like, you don't actually get the context behind that information. So it's like we live in different universes, like with the internet. Like,
Yes.
we're getting so much different information. And if you don't actually go and search the other side and actually see what's going on, then you're gonna think that, the narrative is right, depending on who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, and they're so afraid of, they've been manipulated to the point. I know this because I was manipulated. They're afraid of, so afraid of being perceived by the good people, their social group, their tribe, their political side, or whatever, of being seen. They're so afraid of being seen as right wing, or looking at something that's right wing, or reading a sort, or that they won't even step outside of the silo sometimes to see stuff like this, because it's just such a psychological grip, like just this deep human fear of being,
Mm-hmm.
of in cahoots with the wrong thinkers, the bad side, or the right wing, or whatever the boogeyman is, right? Like,
Yeah.
if I read that, or if I read this, if I read the Twitter files, I'm one of the bad guys now. Like, they think that.
Mm-hmm. Well, think about this too, and this, I know I think I know who was given the files on the LGBT issues too. So with Twitter, um, but there was a person recently, and I can't, her name doesn't slip my mind right now, but she came out with a long thread because is a writer for the Huffington Post, and she was tasked with going through and seeing why J.K. Rowling is transphobic.
Okay. Oh
And she
yeah.
came away from that and goes, I couldn't find anything. And so all these people believe this stuff, but they don't actually read, or they don't have an open mind when they read,
Yes.
what J.K. Rowling actually says.
Yes. They've been given, you're right. I think you're the one who told me about that originally, about that journalist, because
Mm-hmm.
and then what happens if that journalist shares, if you're someone who, if you're like that person and you finally do open your mind enough to investigate and trust yourself as an adult enough to be like, no, I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions. I can read something that I think I'm going to disagree with just to see. And if you're that open-minded, enough to do that, which is a small thing, and you come
Yeah.
away from it with a changed opinion, then you have that fear of, if I share this opinion, I've come to this opinion, and if I share it, I'm going to be ostracized. You're probably
Well,
right. Like,
I mean, it's a cult.
yeah.
That is the cult mentality. I know you love researching cults too, right? So,
Yes. It's
but
cult
that's what
like.
it is. I mean, I spoke about that when I spoke about detransitioners in my human events piece about detransitioners, and I talked about how, like, when you leave the cult, you get attacked, and so there's some people that are speaking out, a small percentage are speaking out, but then you have a number of detransitioners that are just quietly detransitioning because they don't want to take the hate that comes with it.
Yes. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like, who is it? I mean, Leanne Remy leaving Scientology, right? I mean, that is the prime example of what happens in those situations.
Yes. It's exactly, I do think it's very cult-like. That's kind of shocking. That's like throwing ice water on someone who's in it, though. So I don't, like,
Yeah.
I'm like, but it is. I try and, like, just when I'm talking to people, like, who I think are still in it in real life, face to face, people I like, I try and get them just to take a small step, towards being truly open-minded, like, engage with
Hmm.
something, read something that you're not supposed to read, that's, like, taboo, just to
Yeah.
see what you think. Um, and eventually, hopefully, if they go down that path, they'll get to the point too where they start to look back at all of it and say, there are some, at the very least, there are some things that are cult-like about this world that I've
Yeah.
been in, this echo chamber I'm in. But yeah,
Well, you ever heard people, I mean, you hear them say sometimes too, they say, "Oh, I read this so you don't have to," or "I watched this so you don't
yeah,
have to." That is clear to me that you should watch it and you should read
yeah,
that, you know?
it's
Like,
creepy.
and I think I may have told you this before too, like, I don't read a lot of, like, books, I don't read a lot of books anyways, but I read books when I read books from, like, the opposing side. Like, I've
Mm,
read the Communist Manifesto, I've read, Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. I'm
mhm.
reading a book on queer theory right now that's promoting queer theory. And so like those types of things, I think it's more important that you read those to understand how like the person on the other side actually thinks and like where their head is at in this type of stuff.
Yes,
Like my values, I know my values because they just come naturally to me, you know? Like I can think through it for myself. I don't need a book to tell me what to think, but those are the playbooks. Those are the strategies that they're using to manipulate people into their side, in which,
yes.
like you said, it's a cult.
You need to be aware of what the person on the other side of things actually thinks instead of just thinking that you're aware, like some caricature of what they are. But
Yeah,
okay, we're going to
let's go.
continue. Twitter Files Part 10. If you're joining us, that's what we're reading. We're about halfway through it, I believe. We're reading, this was put out by David ZWEIG. I keep butchering his name, I'm sure. You can follow him on Twitter. So he says, in my review of internal files, I found countless instances of tweets labeled as, quote, misleading or taken down entirely, sometimes triggering account suspensions simply because they veered from CDC guidance or differed from establishment views. A tweet by Kelly KGA, a self-proclaimed public health fact checker with 18,000 followers, was flagged as, quote, misleading, and replies and likes were disabled, even though it displayed the CDC's own data. And so you can see here this example of this tweet. Kelly says, what an excellent example of cherry picking. If you narrow it down to only the specific months you specify, which include the largest COVID wave seen across the world, and you ignore all non-disease deaths, and you ignore cancer, heart disease, SIDS, then COVID is leading. And she includes data that proves what she's saying from the CDC, their own chart. And look what Twitter did. They slapped a label on it. Misleading. Internal records showed that a bot had flagged the tweet and that it received many tattles, what the system amusingly calls reports from users. I didn't know that.
I didn't either. This is news to me. That's hilarious.
Tattles. Oh
Okay,
gosh.
now it makes sense. Now you just say, "Are you gonna tattle on me?" Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go.
I bet you and I get tattles a lot. A lot of tattles.
Oh, I probably do a lot.
Internal records show that a bot had flagged the tweet and that it received many tattles, what the system amusingly called reports from users. That triggered a manual review by a human who, despite the tweet showing actual CDC data, nevertheless labeled it misleading. Tellingly, the tweet by Kelly KGA that was mislabeled misleading was a reply to a tweet that contained actual misinformation. COVID has never been the leading cause of death from disease in children, yet that tweet remains on the platform and without a misleading label. And then you can see that tweet is still up. Everything was fine. This person says, quote, since December of 2021, COVID has been the leading cause of death from disease in children. And Kelly's like, no, that's not even true. Here's the chart to prove it from the CDC. She gets tagged with misleading. That
Oh
person
my
who actually said
god.
something that's false gets to stay up. Okay. Whether by humans or algorithms, content that was contrarian but true was still subject to getting flagged or suppressed. This tweet was labeled, quote, misleading, even though the owner of this account, a physician, was referring to the results of a published study. And so you can see this tweet here below, the first study I've seen showing that mRNA vaccines in young people aged 13 or 16 to 39 are associated with cardiac arrest. not just I always mess up this word, myocarditis. And then so they include the study, the scientist does, and then you get this slap with the misleading label. I want to share an anecdote quickly, Sarah. One of the things go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's the where's your peer-reviewed study? Well, here it is. Oh, that's misleading.
Yes. So at some point, this happened to me in the past. I can't remember even now. It was probably a year ago now. It's been a while, but sometime in the past 2 years during this COVID nonsense, you would see through the Twitter files that basically Twitter would make these decisions to censor or ban people or to shadow ban them, which they called visibility filtering. So then they could go in public and lie and say, we don't shadow ban because we visibility filter. They just name it something else. And so they would do this, and then they would like tailor their TOS, their terms of service and stuff to try after the fact to try and cover their asses for this kind of censorship and stuff. Facebook was doing the same thing. And I know this because, excuse me, I had a post censored and taken down on Facebook. They removed it. It was a post that directly linked to a study, a scientific study.
Yeah.
They took it down and they directed me to the new terms of service, which said, even if something is factually true, we will remove it if it could cause vaccine hesitancy. They had updated the terms of service to now say outright, to cover their butts, to say, well, yeah, even if it's factually true, we might still remove it, but if it could cause vaccine hesitancy. Like they were
So
just
basically,
saying
they're
that.
saying, yeah, they're admitting right there that, yeah, we don't really care. We have an agenda, and we're gonna push the agenda. And if it doesn't align with that agenda, then we're gonna remove it. And there's nothing you can do about it.
I mean, they just admitted that out loud in their TOS.
Yeah.
It was insane.
That's why I don't use Facebook. I mean, I'm on Facebook. I have a private. My personal account is private, just because that's talk with family, post pictures with family, and all that stuff. That's where everybody uses. But other than that, I mean, my public account, I don't post much on there because Facebook's the worst.
They're all the worst. I mean, at times I feel like they each have things about them that are something's worse, something's better on each one. And I don't know. I still
Yeah.
use Facebook quite a bit because also I find that the audience is a little different in both places, or the community,
Hmm.
or however you want to think of it. But there's a lot more
Well,
women, I
yeah.
think, on Facebook. I end up
I
in
don't
the
know.
comments. I interact with a lot more women.
Yeah. Well, I say that too because I use Instagram a lot, but I
Mm.
don't use Facebook, and it's the same company.
Same company. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, oh my gosh, you'll have to, after we get through this, we'll have to talk about the censorship of breasts.
Oh, I don't even know about this. Okay.
I'm like
Let's get,
pull up my Instagram. It'll be, or
we'll
you
do it
can look
after
it
the,
out. Yeah.
we're almost done, I think, with the Twitter file, so we can get to another topic if you don't have to run.
No, I don't have to run.
If you guys are joining us, we're just about done with Twitter Files Part 10. And we're reading through this one specifically about COVID. It was put out by David Zweig, Zweig. So he says, Andrew Boston, a Rhode Island physician, was permanently suspended from Twitter after receiving multiple strikes for misinformation. One of his strikes was for a tweet referring to the results from a peer-reviewed study on mRNA vaccines. So this is a doctor, an expert, who's publishing a tweet about an actual scientific study, and that's enough to get you banned, to get a strike on your account. And you can read what he said there. Primary COVID-19 mRNA vaccination temporarily impairs semen concentration and total motile count among semen donors, with apparent rebound by 5 months, but no data on boostering effect. Does boostering yield another decline? Question mark. And he included the study. Well, how dare you, doctor? How dare you, expert? How dare you put up a factual scientific study about the effect of the vaccine on semen concentration? How dare you? He got a strike. A review of Twitter log files revealed that an internal audit conducted after Boston's attorney contacted Twitter found only one of Boston's 5 violations were valid. The one Boston tweet found to still be in violation cited data that was legitimate but inconvenient to the public health establishment's narrative about the risk of flu versus COVID in children. And you can see that tweet here. US and local Rhode Island data, influenza is more lethal than COVID-19 in children, while COVID-19 vaccination causes serious morbidity, more serious morbidity than influenza vaccine in children. And so it included the data there, and that this tweet was considered to still be in violation.
Makes no sense.
That this tweet was not only flagged by a bot, but its violation manually affirmed by a staff member is telling of both the algorithmic and human bias at play. Boston's account was suspended for months and was finally restored on Christmas Day. Another example of human bias run amok was the reaction to this tweet by Trump. Many Trump tweets led to extensive internal debates, and this one was no different. And so this is a tweet from Donald Trump on October 5th of 2020. He says, "I will be leaving the Great Walter Reed Medical Center today at 6:30 p.m. Feeling really good. Don't be afraid of COVID. Don't let it dominate your life. We have developed under the Trump administration some really great drugs and knowledge. I feel better than I did 20 years ago." In a surreal exchange, Jim Baker, at the time Twitter's deputy general counsel, asks why telling people to not be afraid wasn't a violation of Twitter's COVID-19 misinformation policy.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Go back to like 9/11. Remember when George Bush was giving like pep speeches, like "Don't let this rule your lives" and everything like that. Think about what I mean. You look to a president for strength and leadership to motivate the country to not be afraid. Like that's exactly what he should be doing.
Yes. He's supposed to be giving you a how dare you people, how dare you tell people not to let fear dominate their life? Like, this is so funny, Sarah.
I mean, just go back to the only thing you have to fear is fear itself, right? Like quotes, like historic quotes in history that would not be allowed on Twitter today.
You would see that today. You would see a tweet, an internal Twitter communication like this from Jim Baker to Yoel and Stacey. It would be like, why isn't this Kennedy tweet, "You have nothing to fear but fear itself," being censored? We should censor that. It's in violation.
I wonder if you put it on Twitter today with no context, see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's going to get you banned from Twitter.
That'll get you banned.
YouTube now. That's your YouTube strike right there.
Yoel Roth, Twitter's former head of trust and safety, had to explain that optimism wasn't misinformation. This is so funny. So Jim Baker says, "Why isn't this POTUS tweet a violation of our COVID-19 policy, especially the quote, 'Don't be afraid of COVID' statement? Thanks, Jim." And then Yoel says, "Hey, Jim, adding you to the main thread on the subject. In short, this tweet is a broad, optimistic statement. It doesn't incite people to do something harmful, nor does it recommend against taking precautions or following mask directives or other guidelines. It doesn't fall within the published scope of our policies. Curious whether you have a different read on it, though." That's so funny. Remember Kelly KGA with the CDC data tweet? Twitter's response to her is clarifying, quote, "We will prioritize review and labeling of content that could lead to increased exposure or transmission," end quote. Twitter made a decision via the political leanings of senior staff and government pressure that the public health authorities' approach to the pandemic, prioritizing mitigation over other concerns, was, quote, "the science." Information that challenged that view, such as showing harms of vaccines or that could be perceived as downplaying the risk of COVID, especially to children, was subject to moderation and even suppression, no matter whether such views were correct or adopted abroad. What might this pandemic and its aftermath have looked like if there had been a more open debate on Twitter and other social media platforms, not to mention the mainstream press, about the origins of COVID, about lockdowns, about the true risks of COVID in kids, and much more? And then he says, "Thank you to these other journalists and the team for their help in reporting this story." So that's the end of part 10.
See, this is the thing, and this is why I'm such an advocate for free speech, because people can make their own decisions when they have the data available. And if you're suppressing the data available, then only one side gets free speech. Like, again, I talked about that debate I had with the radical feminists. I told Megan after it, I'm like, I'm glad you platformed her, because now people get to see what she really believes, what these types of people really believe. I didn't say I want you to be censored. Like she said she said that she wanted me to be censored in the debate. She said she wanted me to be deplatformed,
Wow.
basically.
Yeah.
And and I'm like, no, I think that you should have the right to speak, and people can make their own choices about this. Like, that's the type of stuff that we should be doing, but old Twitter didn't. And I think Twitter's moving in the right direction, but obviously I'm seeing more people now get banned or get suspended for like hours than I saw before. Like that, me getting suspended for like 12 hours was the first time I've ever been suspended from any social media platform.
Oh,
And
I've been suspended twice in new Twitter, and one was for commenting on your suspension
yeah,
and making the mistake of using the words mental health and trans in the same tweet. And the other was for my profile picture, which they said, do you remember this? They said my profile picture was adult content. And I got
really.
yes, and that I had to replace it, and then they eventually corrected it. They didn't apologize like they did you, but they just I just
Well,
suddenly was
that's
back
usually
on.
what. Yeah, like I said, I was the first one I've ever seen get an apology letter. I've seen one more since, but I'm like, I don't know. It was interesting because yeah, I was already scheduled to go on Newsmax because I was front page on the Post Millennial as well. Because the moment it happened, I messaged Libby and was like, hey, this just happened. Can you guys help me
Oh, the
out?
banning, yeah.
Yeah, and so the Post Millennial ran the story, and then I was talking, yeah, and then I was talking to Newsmax and was scheduled for Friday anyways, and I came back Wednesday night, and then I was actually debating somebody because they were trying to say something else was a mental illness, and I was explaining to them the difference. I wasn't calling for this person to be banned. I was explaining to them, teaching them, like in the marketplace of ideas. I was teaching them why it's a different situation, and why they shouldn't be banned, but why I don't think that they were right. And then just for saying, again, it was a combination thing. I woke up on Friday morning. I'm like, oh, so I sent the producer of Newsmax. I'm like, and I came back Wednesday night. Now I'm suspended again. They're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
It
it's
really is
interesting, yeah.
it's
Like new Twitter
triggered.
is more.
Well, I think there's something going on there, like some kind of like we learned in this version, this part 10 of the Twitter files, that they have these tree farms, or what do they call it? The chart that shows you
Yeah.
if this, then this. And they have these moderators in other countries, and there's also the bots, the AI that are deciding what to ban. And so there is some kind of rule that exists where if you use the phrase mental illness or mental health issues and you also use LGBT or trans
Yep.
in the same tweet, no matter the context, it's like automatic
Yeah. And that's
flagging.
what, and because and that's the other thing is like, because I appealed both decisions and the appeal came back like less than 12 hours later, and they both were denied. Like both my appeal, like on both situations, the appeals were denied. So that's why I said on Newsmax, I was like, so when it came back denied, I knew something more egregious was going on, because that means somebody looked at it and still determined that it was that it was, you know, hateful conduct. And I'm like,
Yeah,
that doesn't make sense.
it doesn't make any sense.
It made up. I'm talking about an issue that I have myself,
You're not
but
allowed to
that's
say
that's
that.
I know, but it's new Twitter. I think again because I think and that's what's interesting too is because both times it was like I tweeted it and that I tweeted it like early morning time frame, or even late at night, and it was like 24 to like it was a little bit over 24 hours later is when I got the ban. So it was like it did go through like a process where it was flagged, went through a process, and then did it. It wasn't like an immediate like this
There's
tweet's no
some kind
longer
of manual review still happening. Yeah.
before
Yeah.
before it happens, and then you got to appeal, and then it's like all this stuff, and it just it makes no it's yeah, it made no sense because yeah, and I think that's why again I had never been banned off previous Twitter because I do think that they knew how it would look and how it would look a trans person getting banned for talking about trans issues. Like,
Yeah.
because I could almost say what I wanted about trans issues as a trans person, and they would their hands
old
were almost
Twitter.
tied. Yeah, in
Oh, I
old
see what
Twitter,
you're
their hands were
saying.
almost tied. Because I actually arrogantly said that on the first one. The person said, "Well, I was just banned like last week for saying that like the exact same thing." I'm like, "Yeah, well, I mean, it's never happened, and I'm also trans, so they would be." And then all of a sudden, like the next day, boom! I was
Boom, you were done.
so arrogant. I'm like, "What the heck?"
Hey, what is
so
this thing that you sent me?
yeah, so play the video. It's so good. Like Facebook and Instagram lifting their breast pic ban.
Okay.
Yeah, this is funny.
Can you guys see this? Okay.
Make sure. So Facebook and Instagram are lifting their no breast pic policy. No, it's only for trans women and non-binary people. Really? Yeah, women are still censored. But I thought trans women are women. Yeah, but that's only with issues that give them an advantage. Oh. So that is why they let these psychos' pictures remain on Instagram and Facebook.
Oh.
You know, that seems a little misogynistic to me. Pretty much. So Facebook.
Wait, so that I understand this correctly, because I missed this. Facebook and Instagram are now saying that you can show pictures of your breasts, but only if you're a trans woman.
So yeah, like breasts can be shown on Instagram or Twitter as long as you're anything but a female or a woman. Like as long as you identify as anything other than a woman.
Okay. We are allowing breasts, but no female breasts, guys.
Well, yeah. So trans women and non-binary females can, and then men can, and it's like, but it makes no sense. Now, and this is the issue, and I was actually concerned when I posted that too, because I didn't want it to make it seem like I was advocating that we should be showing, nudity on these platforms, because actually Facebook and Instagram are 13 and over, so I don't really think that on 13 and over we should be having, nudity on those platforms. And if you do, then there should be some like adult content, like a lot of things have, is it censors it to 18 and over. But at the same point in time, it's like it's so ridiculous, the double standard, though.
Yes, it's such a double standard. As long as it's like a biological man with implants, that fake breast, like you can show that, but
so I can show mine. I can show my boobs,
but I couldn't unless I put a non-binary in my profile. Then I could.
Yes, you could.
What?
That's what they made it seem like. Now, I will say one person, and I've not seen this reported anywhere though, because you saw the headline on the tweet, on the article that I used. It says, like, every headline says that same thing, where it's like, it's only if every headline says that it's only for trans and non-binary people, but somebody said no, it's for everybody. And I was like, but I haven't seen that reported anywhere. And everybody, I mean, this was National Review is the headline that I use. So I mean, it's pretty well-known news sources that are putting it out that it's only for trans and non-binary users can show their boobs.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at this article that just came out yesterday. This is on the Today Show, today.com. Facebook, Instagram told by oversight board to change nudity policy for trans and non-binary people.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. This says
and that's the thing,
the
is
post
like,
that sparked the post that sparked the recommended changes featured images of a bare-chested couple alongside captions discussing healthcare needs of transgender individuals, in particular fundraising for gender-affirming surgery called top surgery. So basically, it looks like there was an activism, this social justice activism push to say, hey, trans and non-binary people have to be able to show their breasts. They have to, because they need to be raising money to have surgery, like breast surgery, right?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Got it. Okay. Wow. That's a pretty Orwellian place that we're in. It's like, look, we're going to allow boobs, but not from women. Okay.
Look at Jules' comment. That's
Let me see. Where is
The
it?
thi
I have to
no,
scroll up.
so Jules, I don't think, I mean, men can't show their penises on there
Okay.
either, so
But eventually they'll be like, "Look, we're gonna allow the what's a good euphemism for I don't know. We're gonna allow men to show their parts, but not
yeah,
men. Not men, but
but only
yeah,
if you've had bottom surgery.
right. Oh gosh, this world is so crazy. Oh, Sarah, thank you for giving me those laughs. You have to laugh at this stuff because it's so absurd. Otherwise, you're just like, what dystopia do we live in? And you have to be able to have a laugh at it and also still talk
You
about how
do.
ridiculous it is. So,
You do, otherwise you'd cry all the time.
yes, you're like, this is so crazy. Okay, what else is on your mind? Or are you good for
I don't
talking?
know. I don't know what else is going on.
I'm not really like, you know, I don't know about you, but the past few months just with the holidays, going through a lot of personal stuff and then the holidays, and then it's just been, I kind of unplugged a little bit more from the news than I used to be plugged into it, and it's been nice. Like, I'm still reading through the
Yeah.
Twitter files, and I'm learning things, like, from you about, like, the 20 different things that are happening in the news cycle that I may have missed, and
Yeah.
that's good getting caught up, but it's also good in some ways. I feel like all of that stuff, it sometimes if I let it lead me around every day of this story, this story, this story, this story, it's so less important than what's actually happening around me in the world
Yeah.
and in my house and renovation and, um, what's happening, like, my husband and I planning our life, things like that, so, I don't know, it's been
Yeah,
a good
there's a
place I've been
lot.
in.
Yeah, I'm finding that too. Because well, I started realizing this at the end of last year that I actually really like traveling. I'm an introvert,
Mhm.
but the thing about it is like when I get out of the city, that I even start to get like a little almost claustrophobic, I guess, being here.
Mhm.
So when I get out of the city, I get to go interact with people at these events and do all that stuff. It re-energizes me. So doing that like once or twice a month is great. I'm
Yeah.
super excited because I haven't done one in a while. Otherwise, I do. I would get stuck on Twitter and everything like that. And then after everything that I've been through like the last month, and we don't have to get into that at all, but on
Yeah.
Twitter and stuff like that, it's like I am taking a completely different approach with Twitter. It's like not going to be my number one thing. I'm not going to be on there
Yeah.
very much. I'm not even going to be really even commenting and under people's posts as much anymore because it's just not worth it, because that just like takes time, and it just your brain just melts, and then it affects your life and your emotions so much that the phrase going out and touching grass is really important.
Yes.
You have to get out and touch grass because that is what brings you back to reality. Because what
Yes.
happens on Twitter, I started realizing like Twitter is not real life. It's
Mhm.
not like, that's what people need to remember is like social media is not real life, and we need to get out and explore things, because stuff that people argue about on there is not stuff that even happens or you even worry about when you're out and about in your everyday life. So it's really
Yeah.
interesting. Again, it's two different worlds. It's like you're living in the virtual world versus the real world.
Have you ever seen the show The Circle?
Yes.
Have
Yes,
you? Guilty
I
pleasure?
do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting yeah, I watch
It
it.
is. It's
I haven't seen the whole new season. I haven't seen the season that's on right now, the whole thing yet, but I'm about 4
I
episodes in, I think.
guilty confession, I have seen it, and my husband actually did it's, like, the last kinda thing he would ever watch, but he got so hooked with it, on it in it with me, because and it would be funny because 'cause we'd be making fun of ourselves like, "Oh gosh, we're gonna watch the new episode of Le Cercle," but, it I get why it's so interesting. It's fascinating because you're talking about Twitter and not being real. Okay,
Yeah.
it's fascinating because it's almost like a psychological study in, um, social environments,
Yeah.
human behavior, and the different outcomes that can happen with the different ways of being in the world. You see, people if people don't know what this is, it's a reality show where these people live in an apartment building, but they never meet each they don't see each other, and they they interact only through a social media platform, kind of like Facebook
Mhm.
or Twitter. And they vote on each other, they rank each other in terms of who they like best, every few days or so, and then different people get blocked, like on social media. And by the end of it, the point of the game is that you want to be the last person standing. You want to be the person ranked the highest who wins the $100,000 at the end. But
Yep.
what's fascinating about it is it's just such a unique, like, human experience. In some people choose to be deceitful, and if you can see if that actually works for people or not. Some people choose to just put their emotions out there and be completely 100% themselves. And then there's something about watching the ways in which people mask things online, and the things they get upset about online when they can't see one another face to face, that's so
Mhm.
interesting. And I've seen some really funny parody videos of it. Like, this one guy's like, this is what it's like on the circle, and it's this guy going, "Oh, why does that guy want to talk to me?" And then he starts chatting with him like, "Hello, brother, how are you?" Smiley face
Exactly.
emoji, heart emoji. Like, it's like so.
Oh my god, you're absolutely right too. That is how it is. But think about that experiment too, because the people that go on there, the people that are in it, they know it's a game and they know there are probably gonna be catfish on there. So they know that some people
Yes.
are not catfish or some people are gonna be catfish. But when you're on Twitter, which is kind of the same type of deal as the circle. When you're on Twitter, you're looking at these profiles and the anonymous profiles, stuff like that, and even the real profiles. You're kind of like, you don't, your guard is not up like it is on
Yes.
the show, and so you start to wonder how many people, on Twitter are
Are like
actually who
that.
they are.
Yes. Yes, there are it reminds me so much of, I don't know, what happens in the real world on social platforms and stuff, and just even offline, like the ways in which people mask things about themselves or engage in disingenuous ways versus the benefits of being authentic. And you will see characters on there, like, some of whom choose to, like, there's one in the new season who she says, "I played with my heart and instead of my head, and it didn't go well." I mean, then others have the opposite experience, like, "I
Hmm.
played with my head instead of my heart, and it didn't go well." Like, it's sort of it's about that struggle of the human heart, of being deceitful or not. And I'd like that, even though it's a mindless reality show. Somebody says, "What network
Yeah,
is it on?" It's on Netflix.
Netflix. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, but I really just I can't help it. That's my guilty pleasure. I was like, whatever. I'm done talking about the
No,
circle.
no, it is it is fascinating. Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's human nature stuff, right? It's like, also, because you can't see the people, and there's a degree of psychology of, like, where humans are making decisions, snap judgments based on what people are saying online, and also the way they present themselves visually. So some people
Yeah.
choose to completely lie and use the photos of other people because they think that visually, for whatever reason, they're not going to be popular. And sometimes they make the wrong choice. Like, there was this older guy who played, and he decided to go into the game as his 28-year-old daughter instead of coming in as an older man. And I don't think what he thought was going to happen happened, where it's like, "Oh, I'm going to
Yeah.
be more popular because I'm presenting myself as a sexy young woman." Like, no, you might have been more popular just playing as yourself, like, as this older dude. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah, and then there's been other ones that have come in and they were younger, but then they were trying to portray like the mama character because they
Oh,
think the
yeah.
mama character gets a
Yeah.
lot of love because they're the older person that doesn't necessarily know like the game of social media. They try to play the ignorance card on stuff, and it's really it is kind of fascinating in that regard, right?
Yeah. I look, I recommend, if you want something mindless that's also fascinating, and you enjoy trying to figure people out. Like, I think it's a good mindless show. Thank you, Night Train, for the super chat. Thank you for the $5. She says, "Keri, your chat is dying to know what your favorite band is and why it's Queen." Also, if you watch that 90s show, it's very diverse in a peg hole. I actually really do like Queen. My favorite
I
song
do
of
too.
theirs is "Crazy Little Thing Called Love" because it sounds like a 50s song. They really do that. It's a crazy little thing called love. You know that song?
I do. I thought
Da-da,
that
da-da,
yeah.
Na-na,
Um,
na-na-na.
the Bohemian Rhapsody movie is phenomenal,
I
and
haven't seen
like
it yet.
the entire Live Aid um portion is amazing at the end. I mean, it really is. And actually, I was looking at stuff, and you can actually there's a video online where it actually takes the picture, like takes the video of the actual Live Aid performance
Mhm.
in the movie, and they are lined up like perfectly. The movements of Freddie Mercury and everything in both sections, it's like they did their homework on that scene, and just the way he controls the crowd, it's just amazing.
I have to see it. Did you see the new Elvis movie? I really liked that one.
I did. I had mixed feelings about the new Elvis movie because I kind of felt like it was like a Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas type
Hmm.
like movie. Like that's how it was like shot, was like that type of like high fueled like drug
Yeah.
induced movie. And so it, it was a fun, interesting movie, I guess, but I don't right. It wasn't my favorite. The Elton John movie wasn't my favorite either. Like the
I
Queen
haven't
movie
seen
was
that.
the only one that was like that I thought was like a phenomenal movie. The other
Really
two
good.
were interesting, but they weren't at that level of the Queen movie.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna check it out then.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you,
gotta
Sarah.
go. You gotta go watch it. Now the other answer to that question. I just watched the first two episodes of that '90s show yesterday. So
I've never even heard of that '90s show, so
it just came out on Net
okay.
it just came out on Netflix, like, within the past week, I think. I
Okay.
wanna say I just saw it the other day, like, it came up in my Netflix email, but it's the same. I mean, it's still Kitty and Red, and it's with their granddaughter, so
I've never seen that '70s show either, so I don't
oh,
know,
jeez, then
but
then you won't then you
I won't know. I won't know. Yeah. Yeah, because 'cause I'm watching stuff like Le Cercle. I just say that because they have a French version, and I was so into the show at one point that I watched the French version, Le Cercle, and
Yeah,
that's funny because then you get to learn French when they say stuff like, bicep emoji, which is like
yeah.
the arm emoji.
So, actually, the other show that I finished last week, which I don't know, did you watch Squid Games?
Yeah, that was excellent.
So did you ever watch Alice in Borderland?
No.
If you like Squid Games, go watch both seasons of Alice in Borderland. It
Okay.
is a great thriller, and I mean, the last season. I mean, it was really good. I mean, I actually think the plot lines are better than Squid
And
Games. I
Squid
think it's a much
Games?
better. It's a much better plot. Yeah,
Cool, I will check that out too. I love entertainment good stuff recommendations,
yeah,
so thank you. Although my husband said after watching The Circle, "Now we're just gonna read for 2 months." He was like, "No more shows, we're just reading." I'm like, "Okay, we're gonna read every night, then I can start watching a new show." But but just reading. Oh, there he goes! Look at him. I thought you said 2 months. He says 2 weeks. No more shows for Keri. It's gonna be reading books at night for 2 weeks. Hey, you're driving. What are you doing typing on?
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you, Sarah, for hanging out today.
Absolutely. Thanks
I
for
hope
inviting
you
me on.
have
This
a
was fun.
wonderful day. Thanks for joining me after the gym. And tell people again where they can find you online.
Yeah. Again. Oh yeah. Radio Gaga is amazing. The comment said that in theirs too. So that's one of my favorites of Queens. Yeah, so go to my website. It's sarahhigdon.com. Quick and easy. You can support my work there. You can see all my articles that I've written, as well as all the links to all my platforms. But then just Twitter and Instagram is just Sarah Higdon with an underscore.
Here we go.
And just watch for me. Got a lot of good stuff coming up here in the next few months. So I'm not
Awesome.
revealing everything that Keri already knows. I've already told her, but I'm not
Yeah,
revealing it to
there's more
the
stuff coming
world.
up. Here's Sarah's website. I've got it on screen, and you can follow Sarah on Twitter here. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today. I'm sorry, I'm showing other how do I stop this? Okay. Thank you guys. Somebody says one day we'll have book club. Yeah, now that Anthony's we're gonna reschedule it. Now that Anthony's like, we're reading no more of Le Cycle.
I told you the book to read too, right? And it's required reading for anybody who wants to be a public figure. And Chrissy Mayer recommended me this book 2 years ago, and I'm finally reading it. It's So You've Been Publicly Shamed.
Oh, I've heard about this
book. It's
book.
a fascinating book. Yeah.
Yes, you did mention that. Cool. That came out a while ago, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, it was 3 or 4 years ago, I think. Yeah, it helps you get through your first public shaming, so it's nice.
One last chat, Robert. Hey, Robert. He says, link to Anthony Garcia music channel. Simp for your man. LOL. Yeah, you guys can follow my husband here on YouTube at Anthony Garcia Music. He has a new piano piece out today, Bach piece, and it's just lovely. And anyway, that's what my mornings are like. I get to listen to beautiful piano music and drink coffee. It's like out of a dream. But go check out his Bach piece. And thank you guys. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you to today's sponsor, the Church on the Square of Georgetown, Texas, which happens to be my church. My church is no longer allowed to advertise on Facebook, which is unfortunate because that's how I and a lot of other church members originally found them. They've been told that they violate community standards. There's no details there of what that means, but you guys know the score. Anyway, since they're not allowed to advertise, I'm here to give them a plug. You can find them online at thechurchonthesquare.org. You can also find videos of all the sermons and some other kinds of content on their YouTube page at Church on the Square. You can also join us. If you happen to be in the Georgetown, Texas area, we meet every Sunday at Ken's Guitars, that's Kenz, Ken's Guitars, right on the Georgetown Square. We meet outside, right on the square. Sometimes, if the weather's nice, you might find us there. You might find us outside in front of Ken's. But if you're local, I hope to see you.